Hi, and welcome to Rise and Rediscover podcast. I'm Rachel, I'm your host, and this podcast is a platform for moms to share their stories of triumph, of difficulty, of any story that we feel needs to be out there to help other moms that are maybe struggling with the same thing and to know that they're not alone. So today I have my friend Deanne. Deanne is the mom of Weston, who's 8 years old. Weston was a little preemie. He was born at 1 pound, thriving. He's beautiful. He's healthy. I'm sure it was very scary in the beginning, and she'll touch on that later in the show. But he's amazing now, and that's really the most important thing. So Deanne has struggled a little bit with some mental health issues and for most of her life, but they came to a head later in life, and she went through a really dark phase. And she's going to tell us about that and how she is now one of the most inspiring, amazing, always has been, but since she came out of it, some of the things that she has to share will really be life-changing for some of you listening. So without further ado, welcome, Deanne.
Well, thank you. I feel very honored to be able to share my story, especially with other mothers. I mean, everyone in general, but especially with other moms. And yeah, like Rachel said, I've struggled with depression pretty much my entire life, or as far back as I can remember. I remember kind of feeling, very low vibrational, very sad, very scared, confused, just about my mental health state as far back as the age of 5. I really didn't have the verbiage or like the education at that time in my life to express what I was feeling, but I always knew that I was different. And I always knew that it took more for me to function than the average person. So, like I said, as far back as 5, and what Rachel touched upon, it really started to come out later in life for me. I think as a young child, I had habits that were kind of markers for, maybe she has some depression or maybe she's, suffering in a way. But it was funny because as a child, it really just got chalked up to she's quiet, she's introverted, she's moody, because I really was not a happy child. I was very, very moody and like, very reserved and very quiet. So I was really hard to read. And, I was born in 86. So this was like the early 90s that I started presenting with these, what I call low vibrational behaviors and patterns. And like I said, it really just got chalked up to that's just the way she is. So it was a rougher ride for me going through life with it because it was really minimized and really not recognized as a mental health disorder until later in life.
Right. Which I think is what happened back then. People didn't look at, mental health. The care for mental health has come such a long way. It's still not anywhere where it needs to be,
right?
But so much further along than when I was a child and you were a child.
Absolutely. It wasn't talked about.
No.
Yeah. It really just was, there were no conversations about this at all. Just imagine feeling that way and not really having anywhere to turn and kind of, again, it being just, she's this or she's that, and people sort of defining what it is rather than saying, hey, maybe we should take a deeper look at this. She's a young girl. Why is she presenting this way? It was not a huge concern. So that's why I think it got bigger than me later in life. And it was so scary because it had festered for so long.
Right.
Yeah.
It's understandable. So talk to me about when it started to really take control.
Yes. During my teenage years, I have manic bipolar depression. So I have like really high highs and very low lows, and there is no in between with me. I wish that there was, because life would have been so much easier.
Right.
There is no in between. It's really high or it's really, really low. So during my teen years, there were some flare-ups for sure, but they were manageable, but I think at the age of 18, I started to realize like, wow, there's really a very big problem here. And what made me realize that was I missed 85 days of school my senior year of high school. Now I had all the friends, like amazing family, like everything that a girl could like want at that point in her life, and it was concerning because it's like, why is this girl never in school? But I had those days started. It started where I could not get out of bed. I could not function. I remember my mom driving me to school sometimes and I would be sobbing in the passenger seat. And she never pried, Sometimes she would ask what's wrong and I would just be like, I don't know. Like, I just feel sad. I don't want to do this today. Like, I don't feel like I can function. And I think she was just being a mom at that point and was like, you really need to try to push through it. You know what I mean? Like, getting me up and getting me out of the house was more her goal at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe she was scared to nurse it because
Mm-hmm.
it can get so big, right? And
Right.
so
Yeah.
you want to be supportive, but you also want to make sure that your child is participating in life.
Right.
So I think that's probably the rock and hard place that she was
Mm-hmm.
like stuck in at that time, but she was super supportive, and I always was able to talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I definitely had on my side. But again, it really started around 18 where I was like, wow, I can't, I was in danger of graduating.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a good student, I didn't struggle academically. So that was very concerning. And then, I graduated high school by the skin of my teeth, honestly. And then, at the age of 21 was where I was actually diagnosed. Right around the age of 21, I decided I wanted to move to California. I had really good friends who lived out there, and we talked about it when we were younger. And so little by little, we all kind of trickled out there and met up and ended up living with each other. But right before, like, I think it was honestly maybe even a week before I caught my flight to move, I had like a serious mental breakdown. I was anxious. I was afraid. I was like questioning it. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I have the skills to live on my own, because I knew that there was this underlying issue with me. Mm-hmm. And so it made the move ultra difficult, but I still went. And as I got on that plane, I'll never forget it. Like I kept going in my head, like, you just got this diagnosis, but like you have medication and you're going to be okay. And this is a good transition for you. But I cried that entire flight because I was afraid. I was scared to be away from my mom and away from my grandparents and, the people that kind of maybe not so much knew exactly what was going on, but at the very least, they were able to have me feel safe and comfortable. Right. And so going to this new territory was very scary for me. And I went, and the depression and the anxiety, that's when they started to interact with each other. Because a lot of times I'll say, if I'm anxious, it's actually when I'm doing better because I'm high functioning. So my anxiety will kick in. When I'm depressed, I'm so low and I'm not functioning at all. It's usually one or the other. Right. But this was the first time I had seen both of them interact with each other. And that was really hard to navigate. Like I said, I went. And again, it was scary and I didn't know how I was going to navigate. I did make it and I was okay. And honestly, it's not like anything diminished or went down or went away. It was more, I was distracted because it was a new place. And so I kind of had no choice but to be like, okay, you're here. Like you have to build your life here. So I was able to manage. And like I said, I had medication because I had just gotten the diagnosis. Right. So they sent me off with medication. So I was okay. But it was really like the ages of 18 and 21 where it started really getting big and it felt sometimes unmanageable. It was those two ages that I recognized how scary it can get. Yeah.
Yeah, it is scary. And I think, where your mom is concerned, as a mom, it's scary to see your child go through that and really not know how to help them. But it's also, you kind of hit the nail on the head, which is when Ava was going through her time of struggle. And people would say, well, she's beautiful. She has all these friends and she's, got great parents and she lives in a beautiful home. Like, what's her problem? And that would make me so angry because that's irrelevant. I remember her first therapy appointment ever. I finally got her to go. And this is when she had really strong body dysmorphic disorder. And the first thing the therapist said to her was, but you're so beautiful. Why do you? And I knew, right? She shut right out because that's not what she needed to hear.
No.
So I think, it just made me think about when, like you said, you had all the friends and, you were popular and you were good in school and all that does not matter when you're fighting that internal battle.
It really doesn't. And I think that's like one of the takeaways I really want people to understand is that, this is a sickness, there is a diagnosis for a reason. And kind of the same thing with Ava. I've gotten that commentary my entire life. You're so beautiful though. You have this amazing family. You're surrounded by love. And I also would like to be very transparent about this because I do think it's important for people to know. And if you're close to me, I live an extremely privileged life, like extreme privilege. honestly beyond what the average person can fathom. I will say that. I come from, you know, a family who were well off, and for me, it's just funny because people always would make that commentary. You have everything. Look at all you have. You have the clothes, you have vacations, and you just have it all. Like, what could possibly be ailing you? And so, kind of like Ava did, I would shut down in those conversations because it just kind of was already apparent to me that whoever might be saying that to me just has no idea that I'm sick.
Right.
That is why this is happening. You and I have had this conversation. When someone has an open wound or a broken bone or a cancer diagnosis, like, everyone is just so doting to them, as they should be.
Right.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't. People need to realize this needs to be treated the exact same way. Someone is ill, they need a remedy. And that is such the stigma with mental health. It's like, oh, it's just all in your head,
which it is.
Which it is.
But it's not there because you want it there.
And we're not choosing to be this way. This is not a choice. These are the cards we have been dealt, and we have to learn how to manage them. So that's really what can be so discouraging when you finally do get the courage and the gumption to talk about what's going on, whether it be with a family member or a friend or your partner or a therapist or all those people combined, and they spit back that commentary to you of how pretty you are.
Like, they minimize it.
They minimize it.
Right. Probably for their own, because they're afraid, which is totally understandable.
Yes.
It is a scary thing when you don't know the right things to say, or you don't know. And, I tell people all the time, it's funny because you and I spoke about this. I'm the person who I have never struggled with any addiction issues. I haven't had depression or anxiety, but I've been the family member that loved the person who did struggle with those things.
Absolutely.
So, as a family member and knowing what these people need, the best thing you say is, I'm here if you need me. That's all you need to say.
That's all we want to hear.
That's all you need to say.
That's all we want to hear. We want to know that we have your undying love and support. There's really nothing tangible that you can hand us. My father at one point said, like, what can I do, Deanne? Honestly, like, what is it? Do you need money? And I'm like, oh, like, you just, and he was just trying to help. You know what I mean? Like, but I said to him, there's nothing you can do. The healing really is in my hands. And as a parent, like, wow, how defeating, right? Like, oh, that must be so hard to hear, like, that there's nothing you can do for me. I have to figure this out, So, yeah, there's that.
All right, let's get into these last few years and when you got to the lowest and how you dug yourself up. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the last 3 years was the biggest, scariest and longest episode that I have experienced with manic depression. So we'll say it was the year 2022. Me, my husband, and my son had just returned from a trip from Disney World. We went for Weston's 5th birthday. During that vacation, first of all, it was an amazing vacation, and it was so fun to bring Weston to Disney. He just lived that whole trip in gratitude. He was so thankful, and it was the best seeing him experience that. I'll never forget that. But I knew something was brewing during that trip. I was extremely anxious. I could not relax. I definitely had my mask on, because we were with other people. So I was smiley but inside I was like crumbling. And my husband kind of picked up on it too. And he was good. I mean, he really helped me like get through the trip. And, it always helps when you're around people because it's kind of a distraction. If it was just the three of us, that vacation probably would have went differently because my husband is my safe space. So I probably would have found it easy to like fall apart in front of him. But because we had other people with us, I was like, you really have to keep it together, so I did my best. But even everybody that was with us noticed that just I was off. So we got home from the trip. That was in April, and about 8 weeks later, we were moving into our new house. So we were living in New Bedford at the time. We were moving to Norton. So that's about 40 minutes from New Bedford. And one thing that I have found is that big changes trigger me, and they trigger episodes for me. And it can either go one way or the other. So it'll either make me really anxious or really depressed. So at this point, when we were returning from the trip, I was feeling anxious, but I started to kind of feel depressed as we were preparing to move. And it was kind of scary because I was like, wow, we have this big transition coming. I have to register Weston for kindergarten. Like, I've got to get in the community and meet people and get my house all set up. And so this, what should have been like an amazing time and something so exciting, was actually very heavy and daunting for me. Right before we did the move, so in between April and June, I talked to my husband and I said, I need to go to the hospital. I cannot do this move. I don't feel prepared. I feel stuck. I'm sad. I'm not functioning, which he obviously had picked up on. I was calling out of work a lot. I was sleeping a lot. And I'm like, yeah, something's about to happen. So he agreed. He's like, okay, like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go and stay where I had stayed before. I had been hospitalized once here before. So I went to a place called Child and Family in New Bedford, and they were great, but again, it was, let's numb her. Let's numb her. So it was lots of medication, lots of therapy though, which was fantastic. And, when you meet people in there that are going through what you're going through, like, you seriously never feel so seen and heard. So there are some people who have more severe issues than you in there. And then there are people who it's lighter for them. And then there are people who are going through exactly what you're going through. So it's all different levels and complexities, but you do kind of feel like, okay, I'm not an alien when you're in there. But a lot of it is heavy medication. So that helped. I stayed for, I think it was maybe 6 or 7 days. So just about a week. And then I came back home and we made our move. I was stabilized when I left that hospital stay, but I wasn't where I needed to be. So once we got into our new house, it kind of just picked right back up. It was not functioning, lots of sleeping, completely disassociated from everybody. I had one small win during that time, and that was getting Weston registered for kindergarten. I was like so happy that I was able to at least do that. But I shut down again, like right after I got that little task done. And again, it was just, she's not functioning. I stopped showing up to things, really barely was eating. Like, I would eat maybe like one meal a day just to kind of sustain a little bit, but just kind of my ADLs, my activities of daily living, they were just almost non-existent. And yeah, I mean, my mental state, my emotional state was just, it was in the toilet. It really was. I was still on medication, working with a therapist and a psychiatrist. So I had eyes on me.
Right.
I was being watched closely. But that's when we moved into the new house. I couldn't even believe that it could get worse, but it got worse. It did. Yeah.
When was it the worst? Let's talk about that.
It was the worst about a year after moving. And it's so crazy because I started to physically look different. And what I mean by that is when people would see me, the few handful of people that I would even let see me, the commentary was always like, you look soulless. Your eyes look black, like my hair was never done. And I was always like in sweats and like oversized clothes because I was overweight from being on mental health meds. That is one of the side effects. They make you gain a lot of weight. So I was really insecure about my body, and I just could not pull myself together to present well. And I was always good at that. This entire time through my whole life. Why? Because of the commentary. You're so beautiful. So I always thought, well, if I look okay, maybe people won't know what's really going on. So that was always one of my superpowers, was wearing the mask and being able to present. But at this stage, I was not even able to do that. I was not able to rise to the occasion and look my best. And so people really started questioning, like, wow, this is really bad, because she doesn't even look like her anymore. And then I started having a lot of like physical symptoms. I think one of the things people don't realize is when your mental health is as bad as mine was, you can start to have physical symptoms and your body can become very ill. So I had a lot of swelling in my face from very high cortisol, swelling in my neck. I developed autoimmune issues, so allergies to things, like I couldn't dye my hair, or I couldn't go get my nails done because my fingernails would actually fall off. So my body started presenting physical symptoms from depression, and that was really scary. So once I started seeing it physically manifest, I'm like, okay, like this is probably the worst it's ever been. And again, I'm not functioning at all.
Right.
I'll be completely honest with you guys. I used to hold my pee for hours in bed because this will lead me into why it was so dark. That was the safest place for me at that point. And my mom always says that best, because people would say, she's not functioning, like she's not getting out of bed. And my mother would say, I don't care, because that is the safest place for her right now. And the reason she was saying that was because this last episode, I was suicidal. I was very suicidal. And it got to a point where every single day was just utter torment. It was a loud, loud narrative in my head that I could not get away from. No matter if I tried to put the TV on, read, doom scroll on my phone, I couldn't even carry a conversation with people, because all I could hear in my head was that it is your time. You would be so much better off dead. And I believed that. So yeah, laying in that bed and not functioning, although it looked horrible and it really wasn't good for me, it was the safest option at that time.
And I mean, if you even remember, because I know you just go into a blackout space, yes, probably.
Yeah.
How was Weston through that? Like, how did he react to that time?
Yeah, Weston, I'm so lucky to have a husband that was able to really take on the things that I wasn't able to do. So Weston, I will say he was, at the time, he was okay. He'd come home from school, and I wasn't working, of course, at the time. I was barely functioning, so I wasn't working. And he would come upstairs and he would, find me in bed, and just that little face like, hey, Mom, how was your day? And I would have nothing to say back. So that was bothersome for me, because I couldn't even fake it for him, and I would say, it was okay, buddy. Or, I'm just resting. Like, Mommy's really tired. So Weston now associates Mommy being tired with that catatonic state that I was in. Mm-hmm. So even though Weston still flourished during that time, he still made his play dates. Like, he was active, in school, active in karate. He had a full life. But he always just Mommy's really tired, mm-hmm. And I know for me, it created overwhelming guilt that was so heavy. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm so thankful for my husband, but it also created overwhelming guilt for me with him too, because me seeing, you don't realize how valuable you are in your home and to your husband or your son or whoever it is that you are a caretaker of, until you can't do it for them. And so with me being suicidal, but also feeling the need to rise to the occasion and care for them, it was so difficult to exist in that space, because I couldn't, but I wanted to, mm-hmm. So it created a lot of guilt. But as far as Weston, just thank God for my husband, because he seriously got him through that time. Fast forward to now, though, I still will hear commentary from Weston. Like, he'll say, oh, Mom, like, we had a long day. Like, you probably need to lay down because you're exhausted, huh? So yeah. He worries about me. Mm-hmm. If I get sick, or I say I have a cold or a stomach ache, like, he's really worried, probably because his little brain remembers when Mommy was tired or Mommy was sick, and he probably thinks he's going to lose me. And not lose me in the sense of I'm going to be gone, right. But I won't be the mommy that I am right now, or the one that I was before this really started taking over. Right. So that's probably the difficult part for him. So it's just constantly having to reassure and remind him that Mommy is fine and everything's under control. Sometimes he will say, like, did you have a good day today, Mom? And I'll say, it was okay, buddy. Or I'll say, well, I'm kind of sad today, or I had a low day today. And he'll say, like, well, what are you going to do? And I'll say, Mommy's going to take a shower. I'm going to put on my favorite clothes. We're going to watch Parent Trap, because that's like one of our favorite comfort movies. Like, I'm going to make a really healthy meal. I'm going to have a smoothie with all my vitamins. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm trying to train Weston's little brain to know that when you feel low, you can bring yourself back up again. Mm-hmm. There is a way out. So, and I honor those things. When I tell him those are the things I'm going to do, I do them. So, he at least has visuals, right? He has visuals of when someone's feeling a certain way. that they can kind of rehabilitate. But his mind very much goes back to that place.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm sure. But it's going to make him a nice, strong, empathetic young man as he gets older, for sure.
He's absolutely an empath. I see it now. Sometimes
Which is good and bad. Believe me, my son is one, so
Yes.
I get it. I totally get it.
I'm like, I didn't really want that for you, Weston, but he got it honestly.
He can be an amazing man, but as his mom, it's hard.
It's hard.
Because he will get hurt sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so that was, to me, a great intro to how did you pull yourself up and out? What flipped the switch to say, Deanne, it's time?
Yeah. So in November of 2023, the depression was still very active. I was still not functioning. So, and let me actually backtrack a little bit. Within that year of us moving into the house, I had another hospital stay. I went again. This time I went to a different facility that was a little bit more medically based. And it, again, tons of medication. I did some sort of therapy in there, but if I'm being completely honest, it wasn't what I was looking for. I couldn't feel a thing when I was in there because I was on so much medication. And so I presented to the doctor, I know how to say what I need to say. So on the 7th day, I sat with the doctor and he said, how are you feeling? And I said, I feel so much better. I am ready to go back home and I'm ready to function. And I just put my little mask on because that's what I've been doing my entire life. And I'm good at it. So I convinced him. And it was so funny. I'll never forget that conversation with him because it put a little switch on in my head. And I was like, Deanne, you are very powerful. You have this doctor tricked that you are ready to go home and you are not ready to go home, but you just want to get out of here, right? So he signed the paperwork and he let me go home. And the weather was nice around that time. So I had spent a lot of time outside. So rehabilitating was easy, but I was still suicidal. And it lasted all the way until that November of 2023. So here we are, winter, November 2023. I said, okay, you are not getting better. Do you really want your husband and your son to come home one more day and find you like this? In bed, crying, upset, starving because you can't even make yourself a meal, numb because you're taking these medications that don't allow you to really be who you are, even if it isn't the best version of yourself, right? And I could not go one more day with exposing them to that. So if I'm being honest with you, the healing and the switch really didn't have to do with me. It had to do with them. I just couldn't, I probably cried. I couldn't allow that anymore. It's like a cancer. It spreads and it really affects the people around you. And I thought to myself, they need a break. They need a break. So I called my cousin, who I'm very close with. Her and I are like sisters, honestly. We're 9 years apart, but we grew up together. So we're very close. And I felt comfortable talking to her. And I just kind of said, I got to get out of my house. I have to get out of here. And she said, well, do you think you want, do you want to go back to another facility or what are you thinking? And I'm like, I really don't. Because they are going to do exactly what they've done the first 3 times I went and stayed somewhere. And so for me, I needed just a change of scenery, maybe not so much those heavy medications, really just a change of scenery. My cousin's a nurse, so I knew that she would not let me lay in bed all day. She would make me get up and shower. She would make sure that I eat, and she will make sure that I still stay in touch with my therapist, my psychiatrist, and that I take my medication. So those things we knew those goals would be met at her house. So it was really her who said it. She said, just pack a bag and come here. We'll figure out the rest when you get here. Just pack a bag and come here. I was so upset that day and crying so hard because I was like, my son's going to come home from school and I'm not going to be here. So it was just such an emotional few hours of me getting my stuff together. I remember my brain was so foggy that day. I don't even remember what I put in the bag. I called my best friend and I said, I have to go stay with family, but I need you to drive me because I can't drive. I was just too upset. So she did. She came over. She's like, take a shower, get some sweats on, and let's get you going. And she brought me there. And I stayed with my cousin for a month, and I shouldn't say a lot of people because there were just a handful of people who knew that I was leaving my house. they all thought, oh, great, like she'll function there, like she will. My cousin was so amazing because she didn't make me do anything. She honestly really let me just rest. She let me clear my mind. She would, check in with me and, have you had something to eat, or come downstairs? I've made coffee, like it's breakfast time. But she really just kind of let me be in my little bubble. It's so funny because when I talk about it with her now, she's like, oh, we had so many plans for you, all of us. Like she's going to exercise, she's going to do this. And they just had like this long list of stuff they wanted me to do, but when I got there, I think she said maybe like 1 or 2 days after I'd been there, her exact words were, she doesn't need that right now. I was tired. Doing nothing all this time, but exhausted because, again,
mental exhaustion is just as big as physical exhaustion.
There's nothing like it.
Question.
There's nothing like it. And like I said, that suicidal narrative was so loud in my head that I think that her goal was, let's just get her mind quiet. So that's what I did. I took off for a month. I still saw Weston in the meantime. He'd come on the weekend and stay and hang out with us. And I talked to him every single day. It was hard. It definitely wasn't easy, but I felt some sense of relief by giving them the break that they needed. Definitely. It was very necessary. Especially for my husband. I don't think people realize like your partner is hurting with you. They do not want to see you like that. You know what I mean? It absolutely tore him up. So it was a good thing. Hard, but a good thing.
Right. Yeah. And it was great that you knew that it was, it was that or suicide.
Yes.
Right? Those were your two options.
Those were my two options.
And you chose the one that was best for them.
Yes.
Which a lot of people will say, even with like addiction recovery, that you have to do it for you. You can't do it for anybody else. It's not true.
It's not true.
Because in those moments when you're suicidal or when you're struggling with addiction, you aren't important.
You're not.
So if a why is what's going to get you out of it, then that is what's going to get you out of it.
Yeah. They were absolutely my why, for sure. Yeah.
That's great. So the month is up and you go back home.
So yeah, that was even a heavier time because the suicidal ideations were a little quieter, but they were still there. They were still there. And yes, the month is up. It's like, okay, it's time to go home. So that was November. So now it's December. It's Christmas. Christmas is one of my favorite holidays. I decorate the house, I'm baking, like I do all the fun stuff. And I remember the last day that I was at my cousin's, I'm like, I have to go home and turn my home into like a magical Christmas wonderland like I do every year for my son. And I have no idea how I'm going to do that. Like I just learned how to get up, take my medication, shower, get dressed, like get to my emails, like follow through with my appointments. Like that stuff was so difficult to tackle. And I had just gotten just a tiny handle on that stuff. So going back home, it was terrifying to know that I was going to have to like rise to the occasion, So I get home and like within a few days of being there, I said like, okay, you gotta try to pick it up a little bit. Like you need to decorate the house. Let's get in the Christmas spirit. Even if you fake it, Deanne, just do it for Weston. And I also wanted Weston to see that I was happy to be home. I really did not want to get back into that state where I'm not functioning and I'm stuck in my room because again, I got away from him to be able to not do that, have those habitual things going on. So yes, like coming home, it was heavy and it was a lot, but I got through it. I decorated the house and I'll never forget. I'm going to cry when I say this too, but one of my really, really good friends, she said, before you go home, let's go to Target. And she's like, I've got some extra money. Like, let's just get Weston some stuff. Like, let's get him some stuff for Christmas. And I thank her because I couldn't do it. Like without her, I would not have been able to do that. I wasn't working. I wasn't functioning well enough to even think about what he was going to get for Christmas. So if it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have had the Christmas he had that year. And so I just texted her the other day and said, like, thank you so much for that. I will never forget that.
It's the little things that change your life and help you move on, for sure.
Truly.
They're so important.
Truly. And so I was able to give him a Christmas. And I remember that Christmas going upstairs and crying because I couldn't get on my pajamas. I was just like lollygagging through the day, and I just wanted to be so much more for him that day. And when I came downstairs, he said, "Best Christmas ever, Mom."
Because it's the little things that you were there. You were present. Whether you were in your pajamas or, you know, even in bed for a couple of extra hours that morning, you were there.
Yeah.
You were the mom that he was hoping would show up for Christmas, and you did.
Right. And
it was a little thing. Didn't have to be a big thing. That's all it was for him.
It was a little thing. And that to me, I'm like, okay, Deanne, like you can breathe, you know, because I was beating myself up for just not being who I normally am around that time. But still, you know, the horrors did persist throughout that holiday season. I remember that New Year's, we had a big family dinner, and I remember being so disassociated during that dinner. Just like, when is this going to end? I remember my husband was able to get me out that New Year's Eve. We were with a few friends, and right before the ball dropped, I said a prayer, and it sounded something like, "God, please take this from me, and I will be the best version of myself. Please don't let me do another year of this. I've already lost so much time to this. Please heal me." And I was desperate, absolutely desperate. When people ask, like, well, what was it? I say, I wish that I could say it was, you know, Vraylar, or it was Zoloft, or I wish that I could say that. I wish that I could say, oh, it was this doctor. Or I wish that I could say that it were
something tangible to
it was something tangible, but it was desperation for a better life. Truly, that was my prayer. From that New Year, so that ended up being 2024, every single day. This is going to sound whimsical, but
I love whimsical, so go ahead.
Every single day, I set an alarm on my phone at 11:11. That's my favorite number. And I started doing manifesting. And I started saying things like, I manifest activities of daily living. I manifest being able to cook a good meal for my family. I manifest a clean and organized home. I manifest a clean vehicle that is reliable and gets me where I need to go, which I had, but just manifested all things that would allow me to function and be my best self. I manifest a job. I want to go back to work. So I did that every single day, and I still do that now. The manifestations are just different now.
Right, of course.
But I did that every single day for a really long time. I can't even remember how long, but probably like a good 6 months. And then one day, I was having a low vibrational day, but I said, I'm going to go sit outside today. Like, the sun's out. So I went and sat outside, and I went on Indeed, and I found a little posting for a job. It was like a spa receptionist. Now, I'm an esthetician. I've been an esthetician for 15 years. I'm overqualified for that, but I just wanted very easy work that didn't require too much brain power because, you know, my mind was exhausted from being suicidal for so long. I needed just easy work, but I needed to show up somewhere. I needed to hold myself accountable. And it was just 3 days a week. So I thought, that's perfect for me. And it was so funny because when I went to the interview, because I did end up applying and they called me back, I remember interviewing with her, and I was laughing when I was done with the interview because I wore my mask. And she hired me right there on the spot. And what was even funnier was she didn't hire me as a receptionist. She hired me as an esthetician, which made it even more comical to me because I thought, you can't sustain, like, you can barely get yourself together. Like, how are you going to promote wellness and give facials and have everybody feeling great when this is like your state of mind, Deanne? Yeah, right. So I did. I thought it was funny. And then I cried after because I thought, now I have to like show up and do this. And I don't even know that I can. And I did, though. I mustered up like a little energy. I'd put my little outfit on and I'd just say, God, like, please get me through this shift. And what do you know? Like, it flowed. It wasn't always easy, but it was good for me. And it kind of kickstarted my healing. I had somewhere to be. I felt valuable again. I thought it was so good for Weston to see mommy going back to work. And I'll never forget the day I told my husband, like, I have a job interview tomorrow. It looked like he was going to cry. Like, he was like, what? Because he's like, okay, her light's on. You know what I mean? Right. So that was probably so comforting to him. And I stuck with it. I showed up early. I would stay late. I didn't call out. Even the days when I was like, I can't do this, I'm like, you have to. Like, you have to go. And I just held myself accountable. And that really did get the ball rolling. So that was a really good feeling for me. Definitely. And yeah, I've been there over a year now, and I'm super happy there.
That's great.
Yeah. That was probably the first thing that I could check off my list that says, that said, okay, like I'm ready to start my healing. So going back to work.
So do you feel like maybe one of the biggest things that have helped you start your healing journey was quieting that voice a little bit and being more powerful in who you are to kind of tell the voice, shut up?
Yeah. And I'm so excited you brought the voice up, because I call the voice, like, her and I, we do not get along. We don't. She is loud and she's deceiving and she's very convincing. And she tells me all the things that I cannot do. And I'll get a little vulgar, but I usually tell her to shut the fuck up, and I just bring her along now. She just comes with me. So she comes with me to the grocery store. She comes with me to Walmart. Like, she comes with me to my son's karate. Like, she comes with me when I go to dinner with my girlfriends. And she's there, but she's a lot more quiet, because I think what she realizes is that I'm more powerful than she is. So I don't buy the narrative. I do not let her run the show anymore. She was running the show for a long time, but I don't let her do that anymore, and she's just, I call her like she's my unwanted roommate in my head that I live with. Been trying to get her to break the lease for a while, but I guess
as long as she's quiet.
She's quiet, right? But, what I've also done is I've practiced like radical acceptance that she is here to stay. She's not going anywhere. And I just have to learn to manage life with her. And like you said, she's just more quiet these days. She really is. And when her activity starts up and she's getting loud, I have a list of things that I do so that my higher self is operating and she's kind of in the background watching. And it's so funny because if I close my eyes and like look at her face, she seems disappointed because she's not winning. But that is like, it's a fun way or like a more comical way of explaining it, right? But yeah, she doesn't run the show anymore. And like I said, I have this list. And like what I've found about the list is I have to do everything on it though. So it's like early mornings, it's getting outside, it's going to the gym, it's supplements, it's healthy, clean eating, it's meditation, it's journaling. Those are the things that work for me. And like I said before, I wish I could say that it was medication. I wish I could say it was a certain doctor.
You know what? When you say that though, Deanne, that would be great. And I think medication is so important. So I'm not belittling that. I want to start with that conversation. It is needed. When you have a chemical imbalance, that's something that needs medication. However, the fact that there'll be women listening to this that maybe can't tolerate a medication or, they're struggling, and in the medical community, that's what they know. Doctors know medications, and but there is another way. It's not easy, right? So you have proven that you were able to pull yourself out with very difficult daily tasks to take over your mind and to quiet that other voice.
Absolutely.
So, I'm hoping that might give some hope to women that are listening that say, I need something else. This medication or this therapy that I'm doing now isn't working. To just investigate other ways, because not one thing doesn't work for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I fell victim to that. Like I said in the beginning, like I started trying medication at 21 years old. I'm 39 now, and I stopped medication just like a year and a half ago. You know what I mean? So when I tell you I have tried every single one, it just, unfortunately, I don't respond to medication. And so many people are wired that way. And so it's funny because I never want anyone to feel, who's on medication, to feel like they're just band-aiding it or that they're not as strong. You are so strong for just taking it on and figuring out how to dig yourself out of that hole. Props to anybody who has sought out therapy, who's seeing a doctor, who's taking medication, but it didn't go that way for me. And I have to work harder, and it's ironically, I have to work harder, and that's okay. And I know what works for me now. And like I said, practicing radical acceptance around my diagnosis has also helped. Because a lot of the times it was, why am I like this? Why is this happening to me? Why? As opposed to just saying, well, this is pretty shitty, right? But here are the things that I know can help me, instead of being reliant on a therapist, reliant on the doctors, reliant on the medication. I wasn't responding. I had to find another way, you know, and my list is my Bible. It is non-negotiable. It's every day. It's the same exact routine, and I will not break that routine for anything. Even if I'm away on vacation, we're still going to the gym. We're still eating healthy. We're still taking our vitamins and supplements. We're still journaling. We're meditating. It's funny. My psychiatrist will sometimes call me and she will say, you defy everything I learned in school. You defy that. You are... it's unbelievable to her, especially because she's one of the only people who knows how very dark and scary this was for me. Because I really was very open with her and transparent, and I was very comfortable with her. So she knows how bad it was. So to hear her say that, it actually makes me recognize my personal power, you know. And when she does call me, she's like, I just have such a soft spot for you, Deanne, because she was pregnant while we were going through this, and it was with her first child. And I think it might have even scared her a little bit to see a mother being so down like that and wanting so badly to care for her child, you know? So she's funny. When she calls me, she's like, I can't believe it, but she's so proud of me. She says that all the time. And she also will say, if you need me, because we know these things can absolutely flare up and come back and, you know, rear their ugly head again. I know I can call her. So that's very comforting to me. She's like, I will always see you as my patient. I don't care if I have no room, I will make it work. And not everybody is lucky enough to have doctors like that, but I feel so blessed for her, because she just really was so understanding. And the fact that she still cares to check up on me is amazing. So I'm so thankful that I had her. Seriously. Again, you know, like I said, I really wish it was a tangible thing that I could say, but really what it was, Rachel, was just a deep-rooted commitment to wanting a better life. That's really what it is. And it's hard work. It's hard work.
But you're doing it, and, you know, your story is going to be so inspirational to so many women. And I do want to say you were fortunate in a way that you have an amazing support system.
Yes.
There are some women and mothers out there that do not.
Yes.
But there are organizations, you just need to find, it might not be in your circle, but there is so much out there, so many people that at any time will drop everything they have to help you. Just a phone call, there is help. So when you feel that it's this is all that you can do and you're ready to take your life, just make a phone call.
Just make a phone call. Definitely. You know, to someone that you really trust and someone that you know is not going to judge you, you know, and just please try to remember how loved you are. You know what I mean? It's so funny because this is morbid humor, and anybody who's going through this, you're gonna chuckle. You will. But I got so close to taking my life that I planned like my entire funeral. I'm not kidding. Down to what I wanted to wear. Who do I want to do my hair? Like, I told my best friend, you better have my nails done. You better. And it's funny because I laugh and say, oh, people will say she was still type A from the grave, you know? And so it gives me a chuckle because I was even that whole narrative. Like, I was like, oh, I've got it all planned out. So that's how close I was. Like, I want people to know, like, this was happening. You know what I mean? There was really, to me, there was no way out. This was the way out. So now to be able to wake up, function, cook, clean, go to work, engage with my husband, like be with my girlfriends, like hang out with my family. I do volunteer work at the Boys and Girls Club. All the things that I'm able to do now, they are all of my manifestations that I told you that I would wish for at 11:11 every day. So I know I said it sounds whimsical, but please, my point is, don't forget how powerful you are. Don't forget how loved you are. Please stay here. You will destroy people if you decide that you want to take your life. And I understand why people do. I get it. It's funny. I think I told you this when we had gone to lunch and we had our talk, but I told you one of the things that actually kept me here and kind of, kept me living was I have a very close relationship with God, and I was afraid that my afterlife would be riddled with depression because I took my life. So that was actually one of the things that's how scary my depression can get, that I thought, wow, what if I go through all of that and then my soul is just like stuck in that place? Do I really want that for myself? That is like one of the things that stopped me. And again, I wish I could say that it was my son that stopped me, or my husband, or my family, or my friends, but I had already made peace with leaving them. It was selfishly my afterlife. I'm like, how am I going to be after I take my life? Like, what is that going to look like? And will this haunt and follow me there? So it's just funny that I was so in deep with those suicidal ideations, that the only thing I could really think about was, well, what will my afterlife be like, as opposed to what will this do to my friends? What will this do to my family? You know what I mean? Because like I said, I already made peace with that. So that's how close I was,
Well, I'm glad you're here to tell your story.
Yeah.
We have a history we've had a great friendship for, a lot older than you, but I'm grateful for you. You were a big support for Ava when she was going through what she was going through. So I'm just glad you're here. And I want to tell you all, this is not the last time you're going to hear or see Deanne. She's got a lot of things up her sleeve to continue to help people and guide them on how she did it and how it can be done with a lot of hard work and dedication. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I
feel appreciate honored. You.
Yeah. And I appreciate you. And thank you for, getting me out of my comfort zone to do this, because the story is really bigger than me. I want every mother to know, like, when you're struggling, like, this does not define you as a mother.
No, absolutely
It really
not.
doesn't. And, you have so much inside of you that will get you to the next step. Even when you believe there's nothing left, like, you can drudge it up. You just gotta really want it. And you have to also believe that you're worth it. I encourage every single mother to do something that I do. I printed a picture of myself. I think I'm 4, maybe 5 years old in the photo, and it's on my nightstand and I did it specifically at that age because this is when the activity started for me, right? I really feel like I recognized that I had depression, like I said, at the age of 5. So the photo sits on my nightstand, and every single morning, like, I look at that little girl, and I get a little emotional when I do that, but I look at her and I just say, like, you deserve to have the best day possible. Because me and her, like, we just take it one day at a time, right? And I tell her that she's beautiful and she's worthy and that she's safe. And it works. It's a little visual representation for me every day. And I'm healing her, because she still lives very much inside of me. And I do things that she would appreciate in my life now. So just to every mom, like, please don't let this define you, and it's okay. It's really okay. You're not an alien because you're going through a rough time and you're finding it hard to care for yourself and the people that you love. You will find your pink again. You'll get your pink back. The light will come back in your eyes. When people who haven't seen me in a long time see me now, you can see on their faces how relieved they feel. And that to me is very reassuring. So just please let the takeaway be that you don't have to suffer, and you were not put here to suffer, and you deserve all the happiness in the world. So
that's a great takeaway.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Truly, I really appreciate you allowing me to do this, because like I said, it's bigger than me.
Yeah, it is. It's a big epidemic right now, but thank you for listening, and we got a lot more to come, but again, stay tuned for this beautiful face who's got a lot more things to share. Thank you.